Chapter 12, Six of Swords. When she arrived home, she found Bruno playing chess with Rodrigo, and from time to time Bruno would yawn in spite of himself. He was bored, but he didn't want his friend to see that the kind gesture wasn't appreciated. "I am sorry for acting like a child," said Bruno. "Don't worry about it," said Carina, smiling gleefully. She was overjoyed at not having to face the consequences of Starlet's words. "Though I still don't understand why you were angry at me in the first place. Was it because I told you to be nice to your sister in front of your nieces?" "Oh, that. Rebecca is not important. As long as she is out of sight, she is out of mind," said Bruno, stating a fact. And he thought, "You had no idea how exhausting it is having to wear this mask." And he added after a long pause, "I bought us plane tickets, and I thought that it would be nice to go on vacation somewhere for the holidays. I pitched the idea to Rodrigo, and he suggested that we visit Cartagena, Colombia. I had never been out of the country, and now it's as good a reason as any to travel abroad, don't you think?" "I wish you would have asked me first before getting the plane tickets, and I haven't been working at my new job for very long, and I do not know how many vacation days I have accumulated," said Carina. "When I said that I bought plane tickets, I meant in a metaphorical sense," said Bruno. And he thought, "I am not stupid, Rebecca, I mean Carina." Carina noticed an immediate change in Bruno's mood, and he picked up a chess piece before making his way to his bedroom. "God, he's probably still on his period, and it will pass," said Rodrigo jokingly. And then turning more seriously, he said, "Bruno only gets like that when he feels that you're treating him like an idiot. It insults his superior intellect when you talk down to him." "I wasn't talking down to him, barked Carina. "I was merely stating a fact. Sheesh." Carina went to the bedroom, and she showered before changing into her pajamas, and when she left the bathroom, she found Bruno lying on the bed while looking at his grandmother's ring. And at that very moment, he was fighting the urge to throw his entire relationship out the window, and his meditation was interrupted by a warm body sitting beside him. "Bruno, does your sister really have such a strong psychological hold over you? And are you truly not able to control yourself in her presence? Is the mere mention of her name all it takes for you to come undone?" asked Carina, putting on her psychological hat. "Rebecca paid my last girlfriend to go away, and she would have paid you to go away as well, but she cannot afford you, Carina. And just because her husband left her, now she wants me to be as miserable and alone as she is. And if you doubt me, I can investigate Tanya Lancaster's finances," said Bruno, writing Tanya's information on a piece of paper. You don't need to prove to me that you are telling me the truth. I believe you," said Carina. "And that sounded like something Rebecca might actually do." And she added, "Was Tanya my predecessor?" "She was," said Bruno, sitting up, and his mouth seemingly seeing that he had his sister in check. "But Rebecca didn't know it yet." "Did you love her?" asked Carina. "I love her as much as I love you," said Bruno, giving a sardonic smile. "Not a lot, I wager," said Carina, coiling her hair around her index finger. "You can love someone and not always get along. I have bad days with my grandma as well, and oftentimes I would throw tantrums whenever she so much as hinted at the possibility of leaving me over the weekends with a mother that treated me like furniture," said Bruno. "I get it, Bruno," said Carina, trying to empathize with Bruno. "No, you don't get it, Carina," said Bruno, finally dropping his mask. "You have your mother, you have aunts, cousins, nieces, and friends. You grew up surrounded by people who loved and supported you, while I only had my grandma. And when she died, I lived in a loveless household, and only Rebecca bothered to feed me and take me to school because Grandma made her promise to look after me," said Bruno. He was about to say more, but he chose to remain silent. He was convinced that Carina was completely incapable of empathizing with him. Carina gave a comforting hug to her boyfriend, and Bruno sighed wearily before closing his eyes. It was then when he became aware of Carina's hands wandering about his muscular arms, and Carina's gesturous fingers swiftly unbuttoned her boyfriend's shirt, and she kissed his neck before her dusty lips kissed lower and lower, and her mouth kissed the most sensitive part of Bruno's flesh, and all intelligent thought escaped his mind, and he no longer thought about his grandmother or his hatred for Rebecca. The only thing that mattered was a singular sensation rising from within his very core. Carina woke early in the morning and she found Bruno looking at one of his chess pieces. It was the Black Queen, and he laid it down when he became aware of Carina's inquisitive gaze. "I want to put flowers in my grandma's grave," said Bruno, sitting up. "Sure, and afterwards we can put flowers in my father's grave," said Carina, jumping out of the bed. And she fancied that she could bond with her boyfriend through their shared misery. "My grandma's graveyard is in Missouri," reminded Bruno. "Then we better hurry," said Carina, making a small little duffel bag. "And how long do you think this trip is going to take? A day, maybe 2? 2 days at the most," said Bruno with a defeated tone in his voice. He fancied that Carina had only asked to come to satisfy her curiosity with regards to the creatures that called themselves his parents. And he fiddled with his grandma's wedding ring, and once again he was fighting the desire to dump Carina. Carina noticed the wedding ring, and she knew that this wedding ring belonged to Bruno's grandmother. If Bruno was wearing it, she fancied that he must be missing her a lot. And Carina got like that sometimes when she was missing her father. And as of lately, she would wear his lab coat to go to work. It was a bit for her, but she didn't care. It made her feel that her father was nearby. The pair left for the airport after having a short breakfast, and they were lucky to find a direct flight to Missouri on such short notice. And after a 4-hour flight, they landed in St. Louis. And during the flight, Carina spent it ranting about her father while she pressured Bruno to talk about his grandmother. And once they landed, Bruno went to rent a car. "And maybe we should just ask your sister for a ride," asked Carina. "I wanted to come and go without having to breathe the same air as Rebecca," said Bruno. "And didn't you tell me that Rebecca has spies? She is probably already expecting you at the cemetery," said Carina. "Don't even joke about that, Carina," said Bruno, shaking his head sadly. "Rebecca is well-to-do, but she isn't a millionaire. She can't afford to hire a professional stalker." "What does your sister do as far as money?" asked Carina. "She rents a few properties, and when the girls are at school, she does real estate. And she also gets alimony from her ex-husband," explained Bruno, and he added sarcastically, "I can also tell you what is Rebecca's favorite flower. It is the amaryllis, and she enjoys long walks in the parks, and on the weekend she hosts a sewing circle, or a gossip circle, as I like to call it. It is rare for them to finish an actual piece." Bruno pouted when he realized that Carina wasn't getting his sarcasm. Carina fancied that Bruno had to like his sister since he knew so much about her. Bruno knew so much about his sister because he had good memory. Whatever new piece of information his brain acquired, it stayed, for better or for worse. "I was thinking, Carina, if we don't call Rebecca, we can make a little visit a big surprise," said Bruno, giving a sly smile. Carina narrowed her eyes, uncertain about this new angle. Bruno added, "By doing a surprise visit, you'll be able to see my family as they truly are, and we won't give them a chance to put on their best face." "I suppose it would be better to get to know the real them," said Carina, agreeing with Bruno. Truth be told, Bruno wanted to limit his exposure to Rebecca as much as possible. The pair rented a car, and he chose a scenic route to the cemetery, and along the way they stopped to have lunch at a local Amish restaurant. And Carina had never seen an Amish in the flesh, and she kept staring in spite of herself. The Amish too silently judged Carina. A new face was often cause for concern and curiosity. Bruno was known in Jamesport, and he often stopped by there on his way to visit his grandma's grave. And it was the first time that Bruno had brought a woman home. "Is she your woman?" asked an Amish maiden who was dying to acquire new gossip. "My fiancé," lied Bruno, and he brought out his grandma's wedding ring before adding, "I even have the wedding ring." "Bruno," whispered Carina. "Congratulations," clapped the Amish men who were also eavesdropping. "Why aren't you wearing the wedding ring?" asked the Amish maiden. "Because she wants to meet my family first," lied Bruno. "Smart," said a Mennonite, looking up from his cell phone. "When you marry someone, you also marry their entire family. Better to make certain that you harmonize with every member to avoid future problems." "So true," said Bruno, agreeing with the Mennonite. The couple paid for the bill before continuing on the road, and after circling about hundreds of identical-looking farms, Bruno finally felt like visiting his grandma's cemetery. Carina had already asked twice if they were lost, and he couldn't delay his visit any longer. They arrived to the cemetery close to sunset, and the cemetery looked positively ancient. The name on top of the fence had almost rusted away. Carina attempted to decipher the name of the cemetery, and the first letter was either an L or an I or an L. The second letter might be a C or an O. There was a big gap missing, followed by the letter E and ending in the letter I. A cold breeze blew through the cemetery, and Carina shivered from head to toe. And as a resident from the Sunshine State, she wasn't used to the cold weather. She looked for Bruno with her eyes, and he was waiting for her to stop staring at the sign. Carina picked up her pace to walk beside her boyfriend, and Bruno opened his brown trench coat to allow Carina to hide within. And she coiled her freezing arms around his waist, and she drew much comfort from his warmth. As they walked, she gave a cursory glance to the scenery. The cemetery was littered with fallen leaves of the American holly trees, and every so often a gust of wind would kick up the dried leaves. And Bruno eventually stopped in a stoic gravestone, and based on the cross and the Guadalupe emblem, Carina guessed that Grandma Ophelia was Roman Catholic. Bruno cleaned the grave marker of the fallen flowers of pine cones and twigs. He picked up the withered bouquet composed of dry roses, a forget-me-not, tulips, and sunflowers. He frowned when he realized that he had been the only person to visit his grandmother in months. He fiddled with his grandmother's wedding ring, and he didn't feel comfortable speaking with his grandmother with Carina nearby. Carina, getting the hint, walked a few ways away to give her boyfriend the illusion of privacy. He saw her man conversing aloud with a memory of his grandmother, and she was a little peeved at being left out of the conversation. Then again, she had never taken Bruno to meet her father. Carina brought out her cell phone, and she texted her mother to give her a sign of life. And Nula breathed a sigh of relief when she got news that her daughter was alive. Carina took photos of the vicinity, and under the low light of the sinking sun, the graveyard looked positively haunted. "How is Bruno doing?" texted Rodrigo. "He's fine, at least he looks fine for when I'm standing," said Carina, looking at Bruno's back. He had turned in such a way to prevent Carina from looking at his face. He didn't like crying in front of others. Crying was a sign of weakness. Crying was a sign of unmanliness. Crying was something he only felt comfortable doing in front of his grandma. When he was small, Rebecca used to get annoyed whenever little Bruno cried, and she would either scoff or mock whenever Bruno threw a tantrum in his grandmother's general presence. Oftentimes she fancied that he was malingering for attention, and even if he was malingering, Bruno eventually came to the conclusion that his sister was indifferent to his suffering. So when his grandmother died, he never bothered to tell Rebecca about his problems, and Bruno's that of the morning, he had cried in front of Carina and Rodrigo, and the two had acknowledged that he was suffering, and they had comforted him without poking fun at his weakness. And by the time he returned to Carina's side, he had made a decision. Alright, that's the end of that chapter, but God bless.